Welcome, everybody, to our 6th episode of Heresy at the Haven. This is a Wobbly Goblin Adventures podcast coming to you from the Gamers Haven in beautiful Spokane, Washington. Here we are again. All right, so we are halfway through our Loyalist Legion focus. This is a series of podcasts we're doing. We're going to try to release them kind of all at once. It's designed to help newer players who are thinking about how to build an army if they want to get into Horus Heresy. We've covered a lot of things that maybe some people will find interesting, some people don't care. Things people should take into consideration, we think, when building a Horus Heresy army.
It could be applicable to veteran players as well. Just a different perspective on things.
It could be. It could be for sure. So last episode, we made it through our 5th episode. We're going numerically through the Loyalist Legions right now. We made it through the 7th Legion, Imperial Fists. Next Legion, in order, would be Night Lords, which are traitors. We'll hit them in the next podcast. Up next, Legion 9, the Blood Angels, which happens to be me. You guys just love hearing me talk, don't you?
Well, this will be the last time for a while.
You think so? You think so?
How much you want to bet?
You want to put some tape on this mouth? So, Blood Angels, 9th Legion. Once again, these guys wrote up their own stuff. I stole straight from Wiki. Wikipedia, fantastic place to go in if you want to dig deeper into any of the legions we're talking about, even the different factions, dig deeper into Horus Heresy. But I'll dive right in. During the late part of the Great Crusade, the Blood Angels became known as being excellent shock assault troops and formed a rivalry with similarly assault-oriented World Eaters legions. It's kind of funny how legions are all kind of tied back into World Eaters. It's almost as if that was by design. Throughout the Great Crusade, the Blood Angels became renowned for its Wars of Ultimatum. These campaigns of open domination against non-compliant worlds began with Sanguinius, their Primarch, or one of his praetors, affording a world an opportunity to embrace unification or face Day of Revelation, in which they would suffer the fury of the Blood Angels unleashed. Many foes confronted by the gathered Blood Angel legions, hosts were overcome with dread and awe and capitulated without hesitation. Those who did not would see the shining countenance of the angel Sanguinius transformed into savage fury as blinding destruction was delivered from on high. However, despite their newfound fame and nobility, the Legion continued to battle its own demons. The bloodlust that defined their early Legion remained, and Sanguinius desperately sought to both keep it a secret and find any solution he could to elevate it. So yeah, a little background going on there. They got a little thing going on with their gene seed that's making them a little angry.
Deeper than you think.
Yeah, absolutely. All of these legions that we're going over, we're going to go deeper into when we finish this series. We'll kind of spatter them through some other episodes as well. So, their army-wide special rule is, once again, pretty solid. How did I end up picking all the close combat ones?
I'm pretty sure we drew lots.
Right.
We had no choice. We came in and you had them all.
Yeah, you're getting this. Sure. You're getting it. All right. Now, I have some experience playing against actually all the factions I picked, so I felt better talking about them. And one of my good friends plays Blood Angels.
To be fair, also, you let us kind of pick which we wanted, what we were interested in doing the new dive.
Thanks for pulling me back from in front of that bus.
Yeah.
All right, so their army-wide special rule in Carmine Fury. On any turn that a Blood Angel unit charges, they require 1 less to wound than they normally would require. So what that means is anytime the Blood Angel unit's charging, if they're rolling dice to wound, it's 1 less. If they need a 4 to wound, it's a 3 to wound. If they need a 5 to wound, it's 4 to wound. They need a 3 to wound, it's a 2 to wound. That's awesome.
Very nice.
That is a really, really good special rule. And as the intro there about them kind of talked about, this is a legion that really focuses heavily on jump pack units, kind of their shock attack. They do a lot of deep striking. They do a lot of hitting the ground and charging in. So once again, another unit that is focused mostly on close combat.
It really plays in that descent of angels coming down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Sanguinius, their Primarch, is he was beautiful. I don't know if there's a better word to say it. Like the Legion aesthetic really does lean into kind of that Roman beauty, I guess.
He was a handsome man.
He was a handsome man. He also had a mutation, which was kind of interesting. He actually grew wings. The guy actually has physical feathery wings off his back. Rites of War. Let's talk about the Rites of War. Now, this plays into that Day of Revelation. The first one is Day of Revelation. So there is a special rule. We've touched on it before. It's called Deep Strike Assault, where if you put units in reserve, they can arrive onto the table many different ways. And one of the most common ones used is Deep Strike Assault. So any of your units, whether they're teleporting or they're dropping out of a drop ship or they're hitting the ground and drop pods that blow their doors open and troops pour out, it's all called Deep Strike Assault. It's all those units come in at once, and it's a very potentially devastating way to hit your opponent before they have a chance to really even shoot at you or respond. You just hit the ground and hit. Now, we'll talk more about the rules later. There is a strong counter for Deep Strike Assault. But Day of Revelation, this Rite of War, is essentially a modified Deep Strike Assault. It gives them even better benefits to their Deep Strike Assault and much more control. Like usually when you Deep Strike Assault, there's a chance that you don't land where you want. You can scatter away. Using this Rite of War, you're going to land where you want. And it really gives their assault shock units a huge advantage to getting them where you want them when you need them there. The only downside to that is any unit that has the Deep Strike special rule has to Deep Strike, period.
Okay.
So you don't have the option. If you've taken that Rite of War and you come up against an opponent, you're like, I don't know if I want to Deep Strike. You're Deep Strike.
You're shoehorned.
Yeah, you absolutely have to Deep Strike. Not a real complicated Rite of War. It's pretty straightforward. Their second one, they only have 2 Rites of War. Their second Rite of War is called the Day of Sorrow, and it's a pretty cool Rite of War because it's all about kind of that immovable object you were talking about with the Imperial Fist. It makes a lot of their most powerful elite unit, their Terminators, makes them also troop in line, and it gives those units bonuses when they're sitting on objectives. They become more durable when they're sitting on objectives. And then one of the things that's really cool is if that unit if it's a 10-man squad and it gets knocked down to 5 or less, if you lose half or more, they power up. They become way more ferocious. They become way more durable when they start losing more.
Just the fact that they get troop and line.
Hey, I'm a traitor, man. Don't talk to me
so
about that.
freaking good.
Yeah.
So is that kind of playing into that gene seed flaw you mentioned earlier?
Well, potentially, because the downside of it is once they hit that below 50%, if there is an enemy unit within 12 inches, which is the threshold where you can opt to charge somebody, declare a charge, they have to. So you can pull them off of an objective because they have to try to charge. Right? Okay. Yeah, exactly. That's that gene seed flaw that they supposedly have kicking in. It makes them way more ferocious. And then the other interesting thing about the other limitation of that Rite of War is you cannot put anything in reserve. So it's kind of the opposite of their other Rite of War where you want to put units in reserve and Deep Strike them. In this one, everybody's on the table, they're immovable, and then more damage they take, they become more ferocious. So a Blood Angel army. I mean, you could lean an army building. You could lean really heavily into characters that all have Deep Strike and units that all have Deep Strike, and really do this massive Deep Strike assault and just shock attack, hit your opponent. Or completely the opposite. Everything starts on the table. Everything's way more durable. Everything's more ferocious, really.
And I'm pretty sure I read they have a deep striking dreadnought.
Oh yeah, that's right. They have that dreadnought I talked about in the last episode. That sarcophagus of a fallen hero who's trundling across the table and punching and shooting. And they have one that can actually deep strike in. Yeah, they have a special rule on that where it has a jump pack that augments their movement. It doubles their movement for the most part. If they're starting on the table, they can jump once and then they move normal. It's like a one-time shot. But if they're equipped with that, they have to deep strike, and then you can drop that dreadnought right in front of your opponent.
So good.
Punch them in the face. So good.
Just another kind of mobile, close combat, assaulty type army.
Yep. Absolutely.
So we've established that deep striking, teleporting is rare, and so far we have 2, 3 legions.
To be fair, no. Deep strike's not rare. They're not teleportation is rare.
Teleportation is rare.
They're all wearing jump packs coming out of Thunderhawks.
Right.
Okay, fair enough.
These are the equipment that allows them to slowly descend down to the ground and then assault versus these Terminator units. We talked about the elite units that are super heavy armor. If you're familiar with Warhammer 40k, there's not a Terminator in the game that doesn't come with Deep Strike. Where in Horus Heresy, Terminators don't come with Deep Strike,
Few and far between.
and the Imperial Fists have a whole bunch of
It's a
Terminator
newer
Deep
technology.
Strike. It's a brand new technology at that time, exactly. Yeah, Blood Angel Army, they also have some unique tanks that come only to them. Their tanks are generally faster, and what that means is a lot of times you can take their tank choices. I think Maul Predator, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think it's fast attack choice. I think you can actually take it as a faster choice.
Now, I might be crossing games. Is it because they're painted red?
Red goes faster.
Is that something different?
But no, yeah, it's a beautiful army. Aesthetically, it can be a gorgeous army, and there's a lot of flexibility in how you build it. If you want that stalwart, sit and take the damage and hold objectives, or if you want that super fast, or a combination of both is probably the best way to build the army.
A more balanced list, for sure.
For sure. Awesome. That's all I got on Blood Angels. Until later.
Until later.
Deep dives are coming. That brings us to the 10th Legion, the Iron Hands. Now, the Iron Hands, I think, are pretty also unique Legion narratively.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, in the actual narration of the Horus Heresy, they didn't play a huge part.
They did not.
I think we're going to discuss kind of quickly this battle on Istvan 5, the drop site massacre.
Yep.
There's actually 3 legions that were almost killed. Probably 90% of the legion were destroyed by the traitors when they were kind of pincered between
ambush,
and that's the Iron Hands. We'll get to later the Salamanders and the Raven Guard. But basically, the Iron Hands were mostly wiped out on Istvan 5, and they didn't really play a huge part after that.
Big thing happened on Istvan 5.
That would be one of our, I'll just say Fulgrim, Emperor's Children of Primarch, actually killed Ferrus Manus.
And they were best friends before.
Yeah. They were forging weapons for each other.
Have we said spoiler alert?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, it happened in the future, so is that a spoiler?
If you're researching Horus Heresy, you're going to find out.
That's
That's right. So they lost their Primarch. They lost most of their Legion on Istvan 5. They kept kind of going after that in kind of what they called the Shattered Legions. Mm-hmm. They made it their mission to at least help however they could in the crusade against the traitors. But the Iron Hands themselves, they're pretty cool. They follow a belief called basically flesh is weak.
Mm-hmm.
This is the idea. They like to actually augment their physical bodies with cybernetics. So actually, modeling-wise, you can go a long ways with them, giving them kind of literal iron hands, cybernetic eyes, things like that. A lot of room for modeling when it comes to iron hands.
And their upgrade kits, I think, come with a lot of cybernetic legs out of cybernetic arms.
Right. They're kind of combat doctrine-wise. They're another one of those legions who are all about steadfast defenders, stalwarts that won't retreat, won't back up. They are loyalists to the core, but they also kind of have a little bit of a mean streak, a little bit of a... They're not the nicest.
They have a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah. They are quite adept at using engines of war. As it kind of plays into their body with the cybernetics. They also kind of have a close relationship, what is called the machine god, the machine spirit.
Yeah. So a faction we'll be talking about later, the Mechanicum. Yeah.
It's kind of this idea that inside of the vehicles in this universe, there's kind of this hidden power, hidden energy, and almost kind of augments them, and the Marines kind of tap into it for different reasons. So it's kind of cool how they kind of go together and use that. To kind of reinforce the idea that Iron Hands are kind of tough and unmovable, their army-wide special rules it's a two-part. The first one is all non-vehicle models. If you shoot at them, you're at -1 strength.
Wow.
Yeah.
Represents the steel, the
so
iron.
Think about that.
Yeah.
All infantry, all dreadnoughts, if they get shot, whatever gun you're using is a -1 strength. So it's pretty solid. The vehicles themselves get a rule called It Will Not Die. At the end of the turn, a random chance to restore a whole point. Also kind of plays into that narrative fluff of hard to take them down.
So they're like self-healing, they're repairing, right?
Machine Spirit comes back into play. The Rite of Wars themselves, they have a couple of them. They're pretty solid. The first one, again, plays back into the Istvan 5 drop site massacre. It's called the Company of Bitter Iron. So actually, in this Rite of War, you cannot take your Primarch Ferrus Manus because he's dead. Right. So after he falls, a lot of the Legion that's left has kind of looked at themselves as failures, and they felt like we failed our Primarch. All we can do now is travel through the galaxy, killing as many traitors as we can. So this is kind of them trying to also redeem themselves, kind of playing back to that White Scars I talked about earlier. You could take a lot of units that have something called Bitter Duty. which just means characters who don't have ability can't join them.
Interesting.
Yeah, so this is, again, those, in their eyes, failure of Space Marines, and you get a bonus if they hate traitors. So they're just a lot better in combat against traitors.
And hatred we can dive into later, but it's a great special rule. And you have hatred anything, it gives you a lot of bonuses in close combat. So having hatred against all traitors, pretty solid.
So very narrative Rite of War, super fun when you kind of dive into the lore on that one. Also pretty solid. The second one is called the Head of the Gorgon. Now, this is kind of the main doctrine of the Iron Hands coming into play into their Rite of War. So they have this idea of an unbreakable wall of bodies. So they have their augmented Space Marines refusing to retreat. Then what they do is they take their giant vehicles with the big guns. They like to flank them. So they have this wall of bodies. All of a sudden, the big vehicles coming from the sides. You have overlapping fire. And you destroy your enemy. So this Rite of War actually lets you outflank your vehicles while making the infantry stubborn. Now, stubborn just means your leadership can never be lowered. You won't run away, right, basically.
Yeah, the mechanism in the game where you could potentially fall back, they won't, which is interesting because it ties into the Isfahan Massacre where they wouldn't fall back, right?
So when you're looking at a kind of a generic or simple Iron Hands type army, it's just strong bodies moving forward, the big guns, the big dreadnoughts, supplementing them. You can really take anything in a Space Marine list with Iron Hands. It all plays well together. Just kind of a fun, solid Legion.
Yeah. A lot of great modeling opportunities with all the cybernetics, a lot of flexibility, very tough, very durable. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I say actually pretty solid for newer players if you're worried about not letting the tactics overwhelm you. Just them being on the table, they don't run away, they don't die easy. Seems to help.
And now, even though that one Rite of War doesn't allow you to take your Primarch, you can still take your Primarch in normal games. Though,
correct.
Right? Gotcha. So it might be a little bit out of the fluff for playing Siege of the Emperor's Palace, and Ferrus Manus is there, but you can still take it.
You can still if you want to.
And I played against Ferrus Manus and his bodyguard in a massive mega battle with a Warlord Titan. If you don't know what a Warlord Titan is, he's about this big. And my Warlord Titan retreated from Ferrus Manus in close combat. That's how good he is in close combat. He was a monster.
That was insane.
That was pretty wild.
I'm not sure rules wild Fulgrim would beat Ferrus Manus.
And
Heresy.
He's sneaky.
That's true.
Yes, he is.
All right, well, next one is, are you done with the Iron Hands, you think?
I'm all set.
All right.
Okay.
You got other comments? Next one would be the 11th Legion. We don't talk about the 11th Legion.
What?
All right.
Then the World Eaters, but those are traitors, so we'll talk about them some other time. Not that you want to talk about them. And that brings us to the 13th Legion, the Ultramarines, lucky number 13. Probably one of the most recognized legions for anybody who just plays game or has ever heard of Warhammer.
Every video game, always Ultramarines.
They're the blue and white. They're known. They're Ultramarines. The Ultramarines, they were previously known as the Warborn before the Heresy. They were the 13th Legion of the Emperor's Space Marine Legions. They had the special honor of being considered the purest of all chapters. Their Primarch is Robute Gilliman. I looked up the pronunciation of that. That's
Robot
what they
Girly
say.
Man.
Robot Girly Man. Robute Gilliman. Their allegiance remained loyal throughout the entire Heresy. Again, kind of playing into the Iron Hands. Not Iron Hands. Playing into they weren't around for the majority of the Heresy.
Thank you, World Eaters.
They were kind of tricked and off in the recesses of space, kind of fighting their own little war while this whole thing was going on.
Bob, you would probably know more, because narratively, the Ultramarines are kind of the largest legion, quote-unquote.
Talking about that 2nd and 11th, yep, they are the largest legion.
I was getting to
Sorry.
that.
I want to steal your thunder.
So they're at the forefront of the Emperor's battles for the length of their existence. That's why when you said that the most loyal was the Imperial Fists, you could argue that
that's a close race.
They bro-fist.
Yes, they bro-fist. They're a legion that follows the doctrines reminiscent of ancient Rome. and the history of traditions that they follow kind of follows into their doctrines and things like that. The Ultramarines are pretty much believed to be the largest Space Marine legions of the Space Marine legions, and one of the most loyal of all of them. And like we alluded to, there's rumors of why they're the largest. And the Ultramarines are also much like the Romans in that they are vast, relentless, and they are legion. So that gives you kind of an insight into their background and what they're kind of like. They're very loyal, they're very indoctrinated, they're very systematic. Regimented.
Yeah. Eyes are dotted, T's are crossed.
Yeah, they are. Their legion ability, their overarching legion ability, is called the Strength of Wisdom. This one's interesting because essentially, if one of the units of Ultramarines fires a weapon, shoots a gun at an enemy, then every other Ultramarine unit within range, a certain range of that unit, gets +1 to hit the unit that was already shot at.
So they target a unit.
They target a unit.
One unit targets a unit, and then all the other units.
And then everything else in range gets to target that unit and shoot.
Overlapping fire.
Yes. So, Strength of Wisdom, right?
Mm.
They all working in unison, very regimented, very disciplined. It's very good ability. Not as good as some, but better than a lot. So
it's pretty good.
I'll take it if I was ever to play Ultramarines. They have, get this, 1 Rite of War. But,
yeah.
but,
big but.
huge but. It plays into the whole idea of the Romans again, in my opinion. And so it's called the Logos Lectora. And basically, at the beginning of every turn, you give 1 of 4 commands, and each command does a different thing to pretty much the entire army. And it's much like Roman generals that were reacting to the changes in the battlefield in real time. And they are not insignificant bonuses. I don't want to go too deep into them because we haven't explained a lot of the rules, but they 4 different types of buffs that can really change the course of how that turn's going to go based on what has gone down.
Makes them really flexible.
Very flexible. So a lot of Ultramarine players out there will still complain that, hey, we only have 1 Rite of War, but it's a very good Rite of War.
What else do you need?
Yeah. So that's essentially the Ultramarines, right? I mean...
Yeah. I've got a lot of opinions about the Ultramarines.
Don't you model your models with Ultramarine like heads and things that are underfoot?
I do, but that's kind of a narrative thing because the army I'm building off of was specifically when the World Eaters and the Ultramarines went at each other in the Battle of Nuceria, so there's a lot of dead Ultramarines on my bases. The one thing I'll tell new players getting into Ultramarines, it's literally one of those factions where you almost have to be careful. You almost have to throttle it back. If you take some of their basic stuff, they're rough. They're rough to play against sometimes.
They have some of the just generally best units in the game.
Their elite units are
straight
phenomenal.
stats, straight abilities. You're just like, who decided that was okay?
I make the joke on a regular basis that an Ultramarine player had to write these rules because those rules are really good. But it's still a great faction. I mean, it still really is a fun faction. And just a quick thing, if you don't mind me adding.
No, go ahead.
The Robot Guilliman,
Rabute
Guilliman, when he passed Heresy, he actually rewrote the doctrines of all Space Marine legions.
He did.
There were legions were too large. They were afraid that this type of thing could happen again, Heresy again, so he made all the legions break down. That's where all your sub-factions of legions come in when you get into 40K. And even all the way into the now future of 40K, he basically just took over the whole Imperium and is now running the Imperium.
He's regarded as the savior
of the Imperium, which the Imperium are evil, so the fact that he's the savior of evil,
Well, I mean, coming from a World Eater?
Yeah,
that doesn't
absolutely.
Do much.
Yeah, we're just dancing. It's all good.
So that was the Ultramarines.
Mm-hmm.
14th Legion is Death Guard, another traitor.
Yep.
15th is the Thousand Sons, another traitor.
Not their fault.
Not their fault. Sons of Horus. It's called the Horus Heresy. You could probably guess where they lie, and if you can't, we're not talking about them in that episode. In this episode, so you figure it out. Then you have the number 17 is the Word Bearers. Again, we're not talking about them either.
Architects of Heresy.
Architects of Heresy. Yep. So that leads us to
Salamanders?
18, your favorite legion.
The Salamanders, the 18th Legion, that I would argue is the most loyal legion. If you really think about it.
It definitely, I've heard you make the argument, and it's legitimate.
Well, let's hear why.
Let's hear why. The Salamanders were the 18th Legion founded in the Great Crusades. They remained loyal to the Emperor, of course. Unfortunately, they were also one of the other Shattered Legions that they're called. They were also wiped out.
Ambushed
on Istvan V. Luckily, Vulcan did not die, who's our Primarch. Yep. He's actually what you call an Eternal. I'm not quite sure if he can die. He's out there somewhere. He's coming back.
That's a deep dive in the fluff.
He's coming back.
That's a deep dive in the fluff. Yep.
So again, they didn't play the biggest part in the Heresy besides the kind of the initial kickoff battle. So they played a big part in the storyline, army-wise. Didn't actually help in the defense of Terra, unfortunately. They are known for actually living on kind of a harsh volcanic world called Nocturne. High in radiation, volcanoes, and lava. And what that actually did, which kind of drew me to them, partly is it kind of changed their features. Mm-hmm. They have cobalt skin, red eyes. To me, they're kind of a little bit different than a lot of other legions. Mm-hmm. They were, in my eyes, kind of a little bit generic. So they're kind of what drew me in. Narratively and gameplay-wise, they kind of rely and are known as being, again, it comes up a few times across legions, stubborn, implacable, no retreat. And in fact, Salamanders would rather die than retreat. It plays a lot into some of their army rules we kind of cover a little bit later. And a kind of a unique thing about the Salamanders that, again, drew me to them as a loyalist, as a good guy, they actually have a penchant for valuing innocent life, human at least. And we mentioned it before in one of our earlier episodes, there really isn't truly a good guy in Horus Heresy. They're all bad. But the Salamanders actually do go out of their way to save innocent life and protect.
That's an incredibly
humans.
Unique aspect
in this world. It really is
for the legions.
They are master artisans. They create not also destructive weapons and vehicles, but they try to make them actually artistic with dragon motif and flame motif. There's kind of a really cool aesthetic about them that I really enjoy. They have a wide range of beliefs. They use librarians a lot, which are kind of those warp magic casters. We'll talk about a lot more coming up. They are big on chaplains, who are kind of the orators of the religion, so-called religions of the Space Marine. And they're big on tech marines. Tech marines are kind of a artisan / mechanic, but they also kind of communicate with the machine god, that kind of power of the machine spirit. We'll get to more of that a little bit later too. So they're really cool in my opinion. Now their army-wide rules also play into this idea of living on this radiated world of Nocturne. They've kind of built up a natural resistance. They're tough to these kind of energy and heat sources. So their army-wide rule says any weapon that has a flamer, volkite, plasma, or melta type, which are kind of these heat / energy weapons, is at -1 to wound them.
Oh, wow.
So their natural ability to they live and work around lava.
Some of the most powerful weapons in the game.
Yeah. So when you hit them with a lava melta weapon, it doesn't hurt as much.
Yeah. It's like Saturday. It's a big deal.
It makes perfect sense.
Right? Yeah.
They're just having a bath.
Yeah. They also give all of their, kind of like the Iron Hands mentioned before, vehicles will not die. Salamanders actually give any multi-wound model or vehicle, it will not die.
Wow.
Which again, end of the turn you roll a dice, you can heal a wound or repair. So again, just a super tough army.
That is interesting.
They have a couple rites of war that play very, very closely to the narrative of the Legion itself. The first one you'll probably see quite a bit when you ever play against Salamanders, or you do play Salamanders, is called the Covenant of Fire. This is actually kind of the doctrine that Vulcan himself put on his legion. So it allows you to take certain units and elite units that have a bunch of flamer weapons. So just think about a giant flamethrower. You can take him as troops, you can take a lot of them. It really plays into the idea of let's cleanse through fire. The only downside is not allowed to deep strike, and you actually can't take units that kind of go against the ethos of Salamanders being the so-called good guy. You can't take anything with bitter duty. You can't take anything with rad grenades. Vulcan kind of looked down on those type of weapons during his crusades himself.
Some of the weapons seem to be more cruel in how they
Yes.
kill, like the radiation weapons, things like that. So there are weapons that are available that you can't take those.
Can't even take them. Right. Now, the next one is also pretty interesting. It's called the Awakening of Fire, Rite of War. Now, this one also comes in after Vulcan he's defeated. He's not killed on Istvan V. There arose something called the Promethean cults in kind of the Salamander's Legion. It's this idea of we're going to follow Vulcan's teachings along with the Emperor's teachings. And Vulcan, he told his Legion that they are responsible for the complete protection and liberation of humanity. And they take this seriously, and they're almost fanatics about it.
I have questions.
Yeah, so this awakening...
I have lots of questions.
This Awakening Fire Rites of War lets you take a special Salamander's Librarian that has special lava powers. He's pretty cool. It also lets you give all of your units fear.
Oh.
Yeah, so because they're fanatics. They just...
Very powerful rule.
Yeah. Fear will actually lower the leadership of your enemies around you. So it's actually pretty narrative, pretty fluffy. You actually have to take a chaplain in the Rite of War. It's a downside in terms that you have to take one.
Because you only have 3 HQ choices.
But chaplains are very good.
Right.
Again, the chaplain's kind of the religious leader of this cult. So it's a kind of cool narrative way to play Salamanders. Now, in terms of list building of Salamanders, I like to build narratively, of course, and that means a lot of kind of close-range firefighting, what they're known for, which is flamers and melta-guns, things like that. So you're looking at a bunch of close combat and close-range shooting units.
Mid-table.
Mid-table,
Yeah.
You really want to get forward mid-table, which could be getting tanks so you can get closer, and again, you can build them however you want. But they're just kind of really fun. And again, how they look is really a big draw with the dragons and the flamers and the Drakeskull cloaks.
I think something to note, even though we're not getting really into the specifics, but Fire Drakes, which is the Salamander Special Terminator, arguably one of the best Terminators in the game.
Yeah, agreed. I've heard other people talk and say the same thing. I think the only downside to them is there are units that are almost as good that are way cheaper in other armies.
Cost is a factor.
And these guys are probably points appropriate or maybe even a little overpointed.
Right.
But they are real good.
Real good,
yeah.
Yeah, so if you want to be upfront in your face with lots of flame and thunderhammers and melta, Salamanders are for you.
So it's not even really they specialize in specific types of units. It's more what the units are equipped with.
Correct.
Gotcha.
The war gear is a big part of a Salamander's army.
Yeah. And you're right. When you were talking earlier about their motif, like a lot of bright green with lots of flames, being yellow and orange, contrasting to the green, a lot of dragon motif.
Dragon skulls on the shoulders.
Yeah. Very, very good. Like even dragon like capes, I think. Yep. Like there's a creature on Nocturne that's like dragon like.
They're one of the coolest looking.
Well, and then when you have that dark black ebony skin with the red eyes and the green and the orange,
it's very
and the
unique.
yellow. Yeah, it's a very, very striking army. Very cool looking army.
Yes, we jump over to 19th.
19th, the last of our Loyalist legions.
But definitely not the last of the legions.
Is it the last?
So the 19th is the Raven Guard. So the Raven Guard are a little different than all of the legions that we've talked about so far. They're pretty unique when it comes to the Loyalist aspect. So Raven Guard is the 19th Legion. They are named after the raven, which is in the Terran cultures of old, the bird that is seen as the herald of fate and the messenger of death. Their Primarch is named Corvus Corax. They are masters of the unseen war. They fight their battles with stealth and speed rather than fury and flames. They are known for their cool-headed, often even intellectual temperaments, their superb infiltration skills, and at furious close quarters engagements. The Raven Guard, they're also masters of the unseen and guerrilla warfare, and they really only engage in frontal assaults when there's no other option that presents itself. So they are the covert, for lack of a better word, assassins of the Loyalist legions. They're super sneaky. They don't want to have an outright confrontation. They'd rather eliminate the problem as easily as possible and move on to the next.
A lot of jump packs, fast army too.
Yes, they have things like that. Their overall Legion ability kind of lends to that aspect as well. It's called Shadow and Fury. And it's kind of complex, so I kind of tried to sum it up as best I could so you understand kind of the aspect of it. But essentially, specific units that you decide to take in your army gain bonuses based on their composition with restrictions that put emphasis on the sneaky nature. So only specifically outfitted or specifically designed units get one of these three bonuses. So ideally, about half the units you take are going to get one of the three specific bonuses to benefit them, and about half of your army is probably going to it'll fall into the restrictions for...
It's interesting. So a lot of the special rules that armies get are just straightforward, like they're harder to hurt, or they're easier to wound your opponent. These ones shoehorn you into playing them a specific way because of the bonuses that they get.
They do, and you can build an army where they all get the bonuses, but you really have to take a specific types of units. So that's a unique aspect, again, about this army that doesn't really fit with the rest of the Loyalist legions. Considering that they do have 2 rights of war. The first right of war is called the Decapitation Strike. Very fitting, based on
straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. And the strategy focuses on killing independent characters. Named characters, HQ choices, things like that. As well as it gives you victory points for killing your enemy's warlord by coming out of the shadows. So you get even more bonus points for killing the warlord. Something else about it is that there is a little bit of a special rule for what we've been talking about, Deep Strike. So if you do use units that have Deep Strike, on the first turn that they come in, they're shrouded. They're covered in darkness, essentially. So they're harder to see, and they get a bonus to not being hit.
A better save.
A better save for not being hit. That's interesting. So
definitely plays into that whole cloak and dagger.
Cloak and dagger.
Spot on. Yep.
So the other one is the Liberation Force. The right of war is called Liberation Force. And this is also unique in that they're fearless in defense of their allies when you take an allied detachment. So this plays into the Raven Guard is the third of the Shattered Legions. That was at Istvan 5. Corvus Corax barely made it out with about 1,000 of his followers after a 90-day campaign trying to leave the planet.
And isn't there another legion that they really don't like because of what happened on Istvan?
I'm fairly certain they're upset with them, but we don't even know if that one.
The Salamanders?
So
everybody loves the Salamanders.
I don't think the Raven Guard loves the Salamanders.
So this one focuses on, as we discussed in the previous episodes, an allied detachment. So when you take an allied detachment, the Raven Guard primary detachment is basically fearless. They gain the stubborn ability when they're defending them. And also they gain bonuses when fighting for the survival of that allied detachment.
Interesting. That's pretty wild.
Even at the cost of being enraged, which means, essentially, in game terms, when they're close enough to the allied detachment to protect them, they gain hatred everything.
Wow, very powerful rule.
Which is an incredibly powerful rule. So you're kind of playing around maybe you dangle your allied detachment out, and then you swoop in from the shadows and defend them to the last.
It's very unique.
Kind of a thing.
It is unique.
It's almost like a predator using bait when they're hunting.
It's interesting, the perspective. I was thinking like a big brother protecting a little brother type thing, and you're like, now predator and bait.
Well, so the Alpha Legion player uses bait.
Right, yeah. Interesting.
Sue me? That's essentially the Raven Guard. They're kind of they're the wet work
Covert ops
of the Loyalist legions.
Interesting.
Cool. So should we jump to the Alpha Legion Loyalists?
I mean, are Alpha Legion traders? Because I'm pretty sure in the book they don't have one either way.
So are we allowed to even talk about them?
I don't think we can talk about them now.
Okay. All right, I guess we'll save them too for the next time.
So Alpha Legion would have been the 20th. Their rules are found in the Hereticus book. They are considered traitors.
That is a nice way of putting it.
Right. But yeah, we'll dive into that later. So that covers all of our Loyalist legions. If any of these legions seem interesting to you, we encourage you to dig into them deeper. Like I said, you can find a ton of lore online. There's so much lore on these legions. If any of them kind of play into your doctrines or whatnot. So you find your legion, you listen to us or don't listen to us in some of our previous podcasts about things you take into consideration when you're building the legion. You find the strengths, you find the weaknesses, play a little bit of both, try to build a balanced list, and go from there.
Like I said, we're going to be releasing deep dives on all the legions.
Cannot wait.
Yeah.
Cannot wait. It's going to be so fun. Yeah, we have a lot. Our catalog we already have worked up for the next, 20 years?
Yep.
It's deep. We've got a lot of plans, and one of them is to deep dive.
So come back, stick around. A lot of good information is coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else?
No, thanks for being here.
Yep.
And
Yep. And well, if you like our content and you want to see more, make sure you like and follow and subscribe. If you want to support us to help grow our ability to create better content, make sure you check out our Patreon in the link tree posted below. And thank God we're done with Loyalists, man. Let's get on to the traitors. Let's get on to the true good guys.
I'm game either way.
That's actually hilarious. You're like straight Loyalist, straight traitor,
and
Alpha Legion. Yeah, it just dawned on me. That's kind of perfect. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.
Have a good one.
Thank you.